Hi, thanks for joining us in our presentation today of our work at Visible Network Labs. We are a company that is really focused on strengthening social connectedness using network science and technology and data. And one of our core purpose and focus is on building capacity and supporting capacity in communities to use network science and data to help strengthen their social connectedness, either through their work building coalitions and networks or helping individuals navigate those kinds of networks. A couple of things that are really important to us is being really authentically community engaged. So building products and services that are informed by the communities that we're going to work with. And in return, we strongly believe in the democratization of data. So, an important part of the work that we do is thinking about how, if communities give us their data, how do we actually give it back to them? And so, we focus a lot on putting data into formats and disseminating it in ways that allow us to really make it accessible and helping folks to translate that data into practice. We do run a platform called Partner, and Partner is our tool that we customize and help communities construct their network data to put in the kinds of measures that they want to know about and that are meaningful to them. And then also to help them kind of get all of the members of their networks or ecosystems, as we call them, into that platform. So part of that work of giving data back is both making it accessible in the way that we visualize it and talk about it, but then also providing a tool back to folks so that they can come in and access it on their own. So today I'm really excited to join my colleague, Dr. Jenny Lawler, who is our Director of Data Science and Insights at Visible Network Labs, to present our presentation from this year's Sunbelt Conference that was in June and of 2024. So I'm going to pass it over to Jenny, who's going to really dig into this and share a little bit more about what this looks like for us.
Thanks, Danielle. We've already kind of introduced both of us. So glad to be here today. But really, as Danielle kind of alluded to, I think there's kind of a key problem that often comes up when we talk about disseminating network findings, especially in the context of these kind of interorganizational network analyses they're super common. Lots of groups want to do this when they're working on these like big, difficult community problems. But most often those results end up in the hands of network leadership and they never make it out to the members who contribute by participating in data collection and often contribute through lots of other types of effort and then don't really get a way to learn about the outcomes of that collective work. So there's just a lot of value in finding ways to disseminate these results more broadly to members of a network and thinking about how we can share with them the incredible value that their contributions are making and how that's contributing towards collective outcomes, but also to help kind of engage in collective sense making, get more kind of minds around the table to think about what's going on and where a network is headed, but also to support action and really think through what are the strategic directions that a network might take. And so we found that tools for sharing these are really limited. There aren't a lot of frameworks or other kind of templates out there that support this. And so that really motivated us to think about, what can we share from some of our experience doing this work? And that really leads us to this presentation today, where we're going to kind of overview two of our approaches that we use for sharing results with network member organizations. And we'll pull a case study out for each of those, just to give you a little bit of a sense for what that looks like in practice. And we'll conclude with some really high level future directions for this work. But a little background about the types of networks that we work with. They are typically interorganizational networks, and they reflect a wide range of typically like public-centric issues, including public health, community development, conservation and sustainability, early childhood education, cradle to career efforts. So it really runs the gamut, but they tend to be sort of public focused interorganizational networks. And kind of a key aspect of that work is that we really hold community engagement as a key value. And we try to include network members and input from network members, throughout the process, starting with the way that we design the survey and identify our bounded lists for the network, but also kind of carrying through to that dissemination phase. And so we really wanted to make a point of developing those dissemination tools that could help close that information loop when we get to the end of our data collection process. So one tool that we use for this is what we call a member profile. And these are individualized reports for each organization in a network. We set these up in our platform. So we make one kind of template and it applies across all of the members. And so it just pulls in their data directly, but it was developed as a result of organizations really asking for more information about their role in a network. And this gives us a way to kind of present results that are tailored specifically to them. And they have a few key components. We typically include, background information to remind everybody why we're here, what we're doing, as well as, content about providing some larger context to data points and next steps that the organization is planning to take. But we also include network maps so members can really situate themselves within the larger kind of network that they've contributed data to. And then we can also compare their individual responses with larger aggregate responses. So these are super helpful. Some of our folks that use these will use them to highlight kind of the strength of their organization when they're making the case to funders for like continued funding by showing that they have a strong network, that their partners perceive them as trustworthy, for example. And they can also identify kind of clear spaces where they're contributing to the network, where they might have, for example, resources that are otherwise scarce. And also just understanding the way that they might be perceived by other members to really learn more about their own positionality in the network. And then we had another kind of piece of this was our dashboards. And we'll show examples of both of these after we describe them. So you'll have a chance to really like put a picture behind it. But dashboards are a curated set of interactive visualizations, again, that we put together using the partner platform. And these are created and shared online. And when we use them online, they're live and interactive, and they can also be downloaded via PDF to kind of make it easier to disseminate. But what's really cool about these is that they automatically update as new data comes in, so you can be tracking kind of changes in your network over time. And some of those like key data points that you might know are really time sensitive. You can see that in real time. And the real kind of purpose there is that it helps to kind of get out some of those key data points to a broad audience, and you can do it faster than a typical reporting cycle where you might need to go through and clean and stylize all of your data. And it makes data navigation really simple for folks who are non-technical. They can just kind of pull things in and share them out. And finally, of course, it helps to maintain really up-to-date metrics on your network. And one kind of final point about our development for these is kind of consistently in the world of network science, we ask these questions about how do we deal with sensitivity in the data, and recognizing that networks involve lots of interdependencies. So we have really thought a lot about what content do we share and how do we share it in ways that really honor the contributions of our members. And so we really start having those conversations at the very beginning of a project. And we really see community engagement as the key to a successful dissemination plan from the very beginning. So we have multiple opportunities for network members to weigh in about, first, what is the content that we're even collecting, and how might that get reported, but also to identify those goals and objectives really clearly, so that everyone knows kind of what's going on. And then we align our data collection to make sure that what we're collecting is actually going to be useful to members, and that we're not going to end up with things that are so sensitive that they won't actually be useful or shareable. And our general guidelines, for really evaluating a data point are to think about our response rates and, subgrouping of data, how much are we going to make identifiable, and what would be the implications of doing that. We also attend to any like metrics that might be sensitive, like, often everybody wants to know about, how people perceive the trust of their partners in a network. That can be really helpful and interesting information to advance the work, but sometimes it's just too sensitive to really do that. And we try to make sure that organizations have those conversations, as early as possible in the process, and then kind of continue following the data to see, as they get further along, is there anything that comes up that makes data points more sensitive based on what happens during data collection. But we also let respondents know upfront exactly how their data will be used, and how it might show up in communications about the work that we're doing. So everyone has the option to participate at the level that they're comfortable with. So now we'll just jump in really quickly to our first case study, which is from an environmental conservation network. And this group is actually, it's the partnership network of Keeping Forests in the United States, which is a group that's working to advance forest conservation in the southern US. And the purpose of their network analysis was really just to understand kind of the current state of the partnerships in the network and to think about how this group could take action in effective ways to kind of move forward, advance their mission and goals. And so we set up member profiles to start highlighting some of the early successes in the collaborative work this group was doing, and really to open up some conversations about resource sharing and next steps, things like that. So I'll actually pull one of these up so we can take a look at it together. And this is the member profile for the Keeping Forest, the actual organization that operates as sort of the backbone for this work. And they gave us permission to share this with their identifying information on it. But, as you can see, we just started them off with some background so everyone can remember why we did this work. Because this is individualized, we also include a header here that shows, who is our contact, who's going to be receiving this member profile, what's the organization, and some details about that. And then to really think from kind of a utilization perspective, we always start with information about how members can use their profiles. So what might they do with them? How can they kind of integrate this data into the work that they're doing? Same thing with kind of giving a little overview of network maps, understanding what they're going to be looking at. And then we show actually the ego network. So you can see your own network here and they can zoom in and out and kind of get a sense for their own connections. But then they can also situate themselves within the larger whole network. So, they can kind of see, their own in degree and out degree here, but also see kind of what that looks like within the larger network and how they might compare in that sense. And then we also break that out for them into specific network metrics with an explanation of each to try to kind of help them understand that in a more kind of accessible way. For this project, we also wanted to include a geographic distribution because these organizations operate specifically in a geographic area, and they're doing work that is place-based and specific in that way. So lots of members have reported that they find these types of maps really helpful. Just a couple more kind of examples from this one. We also included information about resource contributions, which were a question that we asked on the survey, so everyone could talk about what resources they're able to bring to the network or that they already do. So then organizations can kind of be reminded, here's what you said that you bring to the network, and then they can also see an overview of what everyone else said that they bring to the network. And for this project also in particular, because they talked to everybody on the front end, they had permission to do this, they actually built out a resource inventory. So members can actually click on that and go learn about the resources that other members of the network have, and they can do a little bit of sort of matchmaking to get connected with resources that might be interesting for them. And we also included some information about like overall strategy work, understanding kind of where do people perceive that the network is kind of moving, what type of work are they doing. And then the other kind of really interesting thing that we have here is what we call relational value and relational trust scores. And those reflect the way that members' partners actually perceive them. So each member of the network has a chance during the survey to actually rate each of their partners on how much value they bring to the network and their level of trustworthiness. And we ask those using subscales and questions that don't actually, use the words trust or value, but that help us to kind of access those concepts. So similar to other parts of the profile, we show those values overall for the whole network. The members can see kind of, okay, where is our network at? How are we doing? And then they have their own individual score, so they can see where they kind of fall in relationship with the rest of the network. And this was a network where we saw really, really high levels of trust, so super exciting for that. And then finally, we just closed them out by talking a little bit about the outcomes that came from the survey. So what did members see as key outcomes? And we concluded with some kind of follow-ups and next steps. So this was really meant just as like a super high level way for each of the members to get something back after they contributed to the survey, and then also to learn about what else came out of the survey and information that they can use for their own efforts. But that's just a super high level overview, and I'll turn it over to Danielle to talk a little bit about our case of dashboards.
Yeah. So what Jenny was just going through was how we take the data and really narrow it down to the individual level. But I'll show you a little bit of how we take a data set and then also kind of summarize all that complexity into a dashboard that is focused a little bit more at the whole network level. So I started here in our partner platform only to kind of show that we always have the kind of data that all of us are used to getting and looking at. But there are so many different ways, of course, that we can look at that data that it can become overwhelming for someone who's trying to understand it. So the way that we help people make sense of it is while we're looking at different configurations of the maps or filters and things like that, we will save the settings of that view that we're looking at or the images. And as we save those, it builds a library that allows us to build the dashboards. And so all of the data come from another part of the platform, but what that allows us to do is build out dashboards that we can share publicly or keep privately for our project. And so I'm going to present a dashboard from a project. We refer to it as the Jeffco CPRM. This is from a project that we did that was our first and so far only completely public facing CPRM. And CPRM we refer to, the acronym means a community partner relationship management system. And that's the way that our communities think about this platform as kind of an alternative to their traditional customer relationship management systems, their CRM. So this is a place that can be available to put all of the network data in and then be able to see it. And so in this case, a community foundation, Colorado First Foundation, funded this effort, which was to build this public-facing CPRM for Jefferson County, Colorado. And within that project, we focused on these 4 areas of work: early childhood, food security, older adults, and workforce. And what made this project so interesting is that while in a lot of cases we may do 4 different projects or 4 different network analyses based on these, because we were kind of acknowledging that this is a county of organizations that overlap across all of these areas of work for serving people, we were able to get it all into one place and then still do analysis that allowed us to look at it in different ways. So each one of these dashboards we build out, and I'm going to focus on this one, the food security and nutrition partnership dashboard, which I already have open over here. So it looks a little bit like what Jenny was showing with our member profiles, but while we were thinking about doing this and saving the data in different ways, after that, we had to go in and basically build a template out. And so this is based on a template that is always updating the new data that come in here. So sometimes folks will want to save this as a PDF because if new people answer a survey or we add to it, these charts and graphs that I'm about to show you are live, so they will update. So we just wanted to make sure that in this case, when we were communicating data back to the county, we were trying to be as clear as possible about what this is, but we always add links to places they can get more information. But this was a place that we could do both showing access and seeing the maps, but also like Jenny was talking about the different kinds of data that we collect in these network surveys. So where Jenny talked about something like how many resources they provide in a resource database, a view of the whole network will of course be an aggregate of people's responses about the kinds of things they do. And so this is a subset of our larger network just focused on our food security and nutrition services that members of the county, organizations in the county provide. So this is where you would start to see these kinds of maps and graphs that allow us to see that. Some of our graphs are not live, like this crosstab, which will allow us to see 2 data points, but really kind of try to heat map or understand some asset mapping around where different kinds of services might be provided and within which cities. But of course, we also include network maps. So it's really important, as we all know, to put in a key, help people just briefly understand what they're looking at when they see these nodes and lines and the attributes within them. So we do have maps in here that are live, and you will be able to interact with them, but this one is more of a whole network map. We can highlight different key players based on some of our structural measures of how people are connected to each other. This map, for example, is just highlighting the resource contributions that folks contribute. And an interesting thing about this is if I'm really interested in this node right here, I can click on it. I would see who the member is. And if I click on that little eyeball, it will open their member profile. So it connects back to the thing that Jenny was just showing. And so every node in the network has their own member profile. And just a couple of other things, we're able to capture like sub parts of the network. So for example, we ask a question in the survey about what they do together when they interact. So we can see things like who are the members who are sharing and referring clients to each other, and then those that are part of a data sharing network. So we're able to kind of really take what could be really complex for folks, which is just the spider web of nodes and lines, and start to summarize them in ways that people might be able to understand. So that's kind of our goal with the dashboard, and we can include anything in here. These are public facing, so they're the link to them are often embedded in reports, but also on websites and things like that. And for us, we do try to make them short, but that allows us to actually focus on different parts of the network. Jenny showed you some scores like trust and value that we measure, and so we could do a dashboard here just on trust, for example. So there's a ton of flexibility, but most importantly, we try to work with the community to see in what ways the data might be the most useful for them to either use in their grant applications, their strategies to build and strengthen their networks, and things like that. So that's just one more example of one of the ways that we try to make data interactive and accessible, digestible for folks.
Yeah, I can share just our final, my screen sharing function is frozen, but we can just talk about some of our final ideas and next steps as well. Oh, here we go. So just a few things that kind of have come up in our work, thinking about kind of where do we take this. I think a key aspect of this work that we find really interesting and valuable is we always love hearing from people about how they're using these tools and the value that they get from them. But I think, continuing to really explore that and understand what are the best kind of tools and metrics that support continuous improvement in the networks that we work with, and also continuous improvement in what we're providing to do that. And I think that, it lends itself well to some more kind of systematic evaluation, looking at things like profiles and dashboards to understand like what are the actions that different members take as a result, and which types of metrics kind of lead most effectively to successful action or sense making within the networks that we work with, and how they kind of support changes in the way they do collective work and collective outcomes, and how these can actually be supportive to really kind of reflect kind of the long-standing nature of this work, which is that rarely do these networks operate on a short time span. They need to be continuously collecting data, and I think there's just a ton of room to keep thinking about how we present and share information that really supports that ongoing nature of the work that these networks are doing. But thanks so much for joining us. We're hopeful that this will be a resource for anybody that wasn't able to attend the Sunbelt Conference and might have interest in these types of reporting and dissemination tools. Please, as always, feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. You can follow this link to sign up for our monthly newsletter if you want to know more about network science resources or any of the work that we're up to. But thanks so much.
Thank you.
I don't know how to stop the recording. I just got this new. There we go.